Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics in the gaming world, in the tabletop game world, and that is themes in games. I'm generally drawn to games based on two things: the mechanisms, usually innovative mechanisms, and interesting themes. And not just games. I'm drawn to themes in movies and TV shows and books, all sorts of media that I consume. And today I thought I'd talk about my favorite themes and my favorite games that match up with each of those themes. So, to get it out of the way, some themes that I'm not going to go deep into. These were themes that were mentioned by ambassadors when I mentioned this topic that they really like in tabletop games, their favorite tabletop game themes. A bit of a long list here are, and it's not every theme in the world. These are just big themes that are often used in tabletop games: trains, zombies, Cthulhu, horror, mystery, nature, mystery and crime, historical themes, Norse mythology, cyberpunk, empire building, steampunk, the Old West, Vikings, ancient Egypt, survival, the stock market or economics, trading in the Mediterranean, food, sports, and arena fiction. I added that last one at the very end because it's an odd one where I really love books and movies and other forms of media that have arena fiction. This is things like the movie Gladiator or the book Hunger Games. This is arena fiction. You put a bunch of people into an arena and have them fight it out. But I am not drawn to fighting in games quite as much. So that for tabletop games, I didn't quite fit onto these lists. Then I have some honorable mentions because I found that there really are quite a few themes that I enjoy across various forms of media. And so my honorable mentions, I actually have honorable mentions and a game pick for each of these categories. So I love the theme of castles, and my favorite game in that category is the Castles of Mad King Ludwig. I love fantasy in general. There are lots of different versions of fantasy, like classic fantasy tropes, and there's also game designers that kind of create their own fantasy worlds. And I like both of those. I like the creative version. I also like kind of falling back on some of those comfortable fantasy tropes at times. And Lords of Waterdeep will be my pick for that one. Science fiction is a big category. Like I'm thinking like epic space science fiction. And for this one, I picked Dune Imperium. Adventure, again, various forms of adventure games like the Indiana Jones style adventure or the going on a quest style adventure. And I picked the new game Role Player Adventures for that category, for that theme. City building, lots of games in this category. I think my favorite is probably My City right now. Magical Academies. This is one of my favorite versions of fiction to read. And I love the recent Magic the Gathering set, Strixhaven. They had a great set based on a magical academy. Cats. I love my cats. I love the cats as a theme in general. I'm going to do a top 10 cat-themed games at some point. And at the top of that list, you'll probably see the game The Isle of Cats, because I really love that game. Pirates, theme that I generally enjoy. I love the idea of getting on a boat and sailing out on an adventure, and pirates often capture that theme. And my favorite game in that category is Libertalia. Then anthropomorphic animals. My favorite game in this category is Everdell. I loved reading the Redwall books as a kid, and Everdell really captures that feeling in a tabletop game form. And then finally, while sports are not my favorite category, thematic category, I do love a subset of that, racing games. And Downforce is my favorite racing game. So let's move on to my top 10. And I own many of these games, and I will say, more so than normal, there are a lot of games on this list that were either designed by me or published by Stonemaier Games. In fact, all of these games that are Stonemaier Games were also at least designed or co-designed by me. I usually stay away from that on these top 10 lists, but it kind of makes sense here that some of my favorite themes are themes that I've designed games for, and some of my favorite games in those themes are the games that I designed because I designed them to be what I wanted to see for that theme in the gaming world. So you'll have to bear with me if you don't want to hear about some Stonemaier games because there are more than normal on this list. So number 10, one of my favorite themes is dystopian fiction. So dystopias in general. I love seeing kind of different versions, or not different versions, versions of the future where one little thing is taken a little bit too far, or several things are taken a little bit too far, usually leading to something bad, but sometimes there are good things that can come of dystopias, usually inherently not, but usually it's like an interesting idea that has the potential to be good, but it's taken too far and ends up being bad. And my pick of games for this category, this theme, is Euphoria. Euphoria is one of the second games, the second game that I published and designed, and it is a dystopian-themed game based on a fictional world, a fictional universe, with 4 different factions: the Euphorians, the Wastelanders, the Subterrans, and the Icarites. There's a story behind it, and at its heart, it's a worker placement game where you are essentially managing, you are building a better dystopia, as the tagline says. You are managing, you're kind of a low-level manager in this dystopia. And unlike many dystopian games where they are very sad, as they appropriately should be due to the theme, I tried to go with kind of a tongue-in-cheek look at this world, where the colors are very bright in the game, bright and colorful. It's kind of the idea that the people running this dystopia are trying to make the people in the dystopia forget that they are in a dystopian city or a dystopian world. But yeah, it's a DICE worker placement game that is very brightly colored thanks to the art of Jackie Davis, and I really enjoyed it. I designed it. It is my favorite dystopian-themed game at number 10. At number 9, I have the category of farming games. Farming is an odd theme. Like, it doesn't actually fit onto this list in some ways because I don't really want to read a book about farming. I don't really want to watch a movie about farming, but I love the step-by-step order of operations, procedures, and growth and progression from farming tabletop games, starting with Agricola, Caverna, many other games, and culminating in my design, Viticulture. So Viticulture is going to be my favorite farming-themed game. This is a game about running a vineyard, and I really tried to lean into the rustic look of running a vineyard in old world Tuscany throughout the game. I wanted players to really feel that immersion in that specific area and time period of the world. And Viticulture, again, is a worker placement game, similar to Euphoria, but not with dice. In Viticulture, you're placing workers. You are going through this order of operations where you're building structures so that you can plant vines, and then you are harvesting grapes from those vines, and then you're turning those grapes into wine, and then filling wine orders. So there's this nice sense of progression and flow. I'm going to do a video soon about my favorite mechanisms in Viticulture, so you can probably see more about that soon. But I just love kind of the pleasant theme of farming, the progression that comes out of it. It's something that I really respect farmers who do this work every day in real life, but it's not something that I want to do in real life. And so being able to play it in the low stakes format of a tabletop game is really nice for me. So Viticulture is my number 1 farming game. At number 8, I have a theme that I love in general across all forms of media, and that is superheroes. I really, really love superhero fiction. Now, I'm guessing many people who see this will think of games like Marvel Champions, a game that I played. I have enjoyed it, and I think for a lot of people that might be their favorite pick. But for me, I think my favorite superhero game right now is Sentinels of the Multiverse. I really love, in Sentinels of the Multiverse, it's a very asymmetric cooperative game where each player has their own deck of cards, and you're going through this deck of cards and playing these abilities that are very specific to your character in the game as you try to defeat the villain in that scenario. And I love how well those decks of cards are designed. It really feels like, in my opinion, that you are this character when you are playing through those cards in those decks. I'm amazed at how many unique decks they've designed for Sentinels of the Multiverse, and I've just really touched upon the surface of it, playing maybe a handful of times at this point. But yeah, whenever I want to really feel like I am a superhero working with a team to take down a bad guy, I want to play Sentinels in the Multiverse. Number 7, I have Old World Japan. You may know if you've watched these videos for a while that I have studied Japanese for most of my life, or I studied it for most of the first half of my life, from 7th grade all the way through college. I studied abroad twice in Hiroshima. I studied it abroad for a year in Kyoto, or an academic year. And Kyoto is a great place to do it because it's a great mix of old world Japan and modern Japan. It's a beautiful city if you ever get the chance to visit. But I love Japanese themes. I love Japanese fantasy. I love feudal Japan. I love old world Japan. I love all sorts of Japanese games, or games set with the Japanese theme. I even have a video about my top 10 Japanese themed games. And my top pick right now for this theme is going to be Hanami Koji, which I meant to carry over here, but I don't have it actually with me. But Hanami Koji is a wonderful I cut you choose 1v1 game set with kind of a theme of geishas. The theme is fairly light in it, but I think the art captures the theme really well. My second pick for this would have been Yedo, but I think Hanami Koji edges Yedo just a little bit. But yeah, I love the theme of old world Japan and any Japanese themes in general. That's Hanami Koji, number 7 on this list. And keep in mind that this list is ranked based on the themes, not the game. So that it's a theme ranked list. not the games themselves. At number 6, we have alternate history, and you might be able to guess the pick for this. I love alternate histories. I love little changes to one thing in the past and how that affects the future and the present. And that is what enamored me about the world of Scythe, the 1920-plus world that Jakub Rosalski started designing, and that I happened to stumble upon it while he was in the design process of working on this world, and I helped him, or worked with him, to further develop the world, and I designed this game Scythe within this alternate history 1920s, where the main twist is that instead of tanks in this world, there are mechs. That's the main thing that's different in this world. But there are some historical differences too to Scythe. But yeah, I mean, you look at the art. I truly love what Jakub did with the art in this world. The feeling that I get when I look at this art is really amazing. Especially since even though the cover is probably one of the few illustrations in the game that looks like combat is happening. The combat is literally happening on the cover, but it is not a combat-filled art world. There aren't a lot of illustrations that Jakub made that have actual combat and conflict happening. Instead, it's like slice of life, like this is our life. There's a mech in our backyard. That's just normal for us. And there's something about that I really, really love about his art and this world that Jakub created. So yeah, my favorite alternate history game is Scythe. And as I say that, I'm really excited to hear your comments on this list, because I know you probably will see some of these themes and think, okay, those are my favorite themes. These are the themes that I see and I get really excited about a game. But I'd also love to hear your picks of your favorite games for each of these themes that I've mentioned. You might have another great alternate history game that I haven't even thought of or that I forgot for this list. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments below. Let's get to number 5, the theme of exploration. I love games where I'm exploring someplace new. And I think some games do it in different ways. Some games show you a big map and you get to go out and visit these places on the map and maybe read storybook entries or draw cards linked to those areas, but you get to see everything up front. I think my favorite exploration games are those where there's a big sense of the unknown, where I don't know what that whole map looks like. I don't know where we're going. And my pick for that, the open world adventure exploration game, Sleeping Gods, is my favorite exploration game right now. It just does a wonderful job of giving you a sense of, this is what you can see right now. Here's an interesting map of places that you can go and you can learn about. But there's more. There's another map you can turn to that you can sail over to. You can go over there. And it's completely open. You can sail in any direction at any time. I love that about Sleeping Gods, that openness to the exploration of this world, the sense of the unknown. And it really, I want to stress those two levels of, there are maps that you can't see, but also when you're looking at the current map, there are things that you can see, like you might see a volcano, and there's a place that you can go near that volcano, and you can see there's a volcano, you can see that much, but you don't know what you're going to find there until you open up the storybook. I love that sense of the unknown as well. So yeah, I love Sleeping Gods. It's a wonderful cooperative exploration game, one of my favorites, and definitely my favorite exploration game right now. Even though there are a lot of games in this genre that I love. There are quite a few that I could have mentioned here, but I really love Sleeping Gods. So that's my number 5 favorite theme, exploration. The next theme I stumbled upon a little bit because I've run into a scenario in a game that I'm playing. I don't want to spoil what that game is, but it is a game where we are going to kind of dig down below the surface into what I think is a prison, and perhaps explore some cave system. We're exploring a cave system, basically, and there might be some mining involved. And I've called this theme cave mining, because I think that's the thing that's the most interesting to me, where you have a cave that you can explore a little bit, but where you can also dig and open up new tunnels and new caverns and things like that. And my pick here, which is a little more abstract than is technically the case for this theme, but that is Dice Miner. I really, really love Dice Miner. It's a dice drafting game. You can see the back here. It's a dice drafting game where you are basically just drafting dice and then rolling them once per round to gather more stuff. So you're drafting exactly a specific die, getting the thing on that die, and then at the end of each round, if you have accumulated all these dice each from round to round, and you're rolling all of them to maybe get a different benefit in the next round. So I love the game. You can watch my video on Dice Miner. I was a little on the fence about picking it because it is literally this theme, cave mining. This is literally the theme of Dice Miner. But in particular, and as much as I love this game, I think of this theme in terms of kind of a map where you're looking down underneath the ground and digging down there and exploring a little bit, but mostly kind of digging and harvesting whatever the crystals you're finding down there. Super Motherlode came very close to being my pick for this because Super Motherlode does that theme really, really well. But I ended up going with Dice Miner. Dice Miner, my pick of cave mining. But I'd love to hear other suggestions here. Oh, the other one that almost made the list was In the Hall of the Mountain King. That is another fantastic game with a very similar theme. And number 3 is Civilization. And I'll hold up my new Tapestry expansion here. Tapestry is the Civilization game that I always wanted to exist, and so I designed it. The reason the thing that I kind of missed from other Civilization games is that many of them felt more like actual empire building games. There are a lot of Civ games where you aren't advancing from era to era, and you're pretty much just, if you are doing anything in history, you're following actual real world history. So you're having to do what history has already done for us, kind of just going through the motions of that history. Or they, like I said, they're more empire building, where it's more. I picture empire building being like you're not advancing through the ages; you are just essentially conquering and expanding out in a single period of time. What I wanted was a game that spanned from the beginning of time into the future, where you could take very different paths, where you could actually kind of create your own alternate histories. I mentioned alternate histories previously on this list, and that's what Tapestry is all about. It's a Civ game where you are really building a completely unique civilization, one that has not existed in the course of real-world history, because why would we want to do that? We're playing a game. We get to make our own histories, and I really have always wanted to do that with a Civilization game, and that's why I designed Tapestry. The other Civilization game that I really love, that some would argue may not be a Civilization game, but I think it hits all the check marks of a Civ game, and that is Seven Wonders Duel. I really love Seven Wonders Duel. I think it has all these different, it has technologies, it has scientific advancements, it has some military aspects to the game. It's abstracted a little bit, but it's such a well-designed game that I really enjoy that too. But Tapestry is the Civ game that I always wanted to exist, so I designed it. That's number 3, Civilization. Getting down to my number 2 themes, which cross over all forms of media. I love these 2 themes. At number 2, I love heists. I love heist fiction. I love heist books. I love heist movies, TV shows. And I love heist games, tabletop games. I almost picked Burger Brothers for this, but I'm going to go with one of my favorite games, which is literally a heist game, and that is Clank. Clank, not necessarily the Acquisition Incorporated, although it's a wonderful legacy version of Clank, but Clank is a game where you are literally robbing a dungeon. You're going down into a dungeon, a cave system. Again, caves. I love caves, apparently. You're going down into a cave system and gathering all the treasure and gold that you can, and then trying to run out while you still can. Like, it's literally like you are executing a heist in the game. It doesn't fit some of the heist tropes that we see in movies or TV. Like, you're not really gathering together a team, although you kind of are through the cards that you're getting throughout the game, but not at the beginning. You're getting those cards throughout the game. But it is such a wonderful, delightful, satisfying heist-themed game where you get to choose these different paths that you're going down into the dungeon, deciding which treasure you want to go after, which little random tokens you want to go after, which cards you want to use to build your deck, and all the while worrying about the clank aspect, which is the noise you're making, which can awaken the dragon, which is kind of the big bad thing that you want to watch out for when you're trying to execute this heist. Yeah, I love Clank so much, and I love the heist theme in general, especially heist movies. I love heist movies. That's number 2. My number 1 theme across all forms of media is time travel. Both time travel fiction and time loop fiction. Sometimes sometimes it's just one or the other, but I love both of those forms of fiction, time loop and time travel. So time loop is like the Live, Die, Repeat, that movie with Tom Cruise, or Groundhog Day, classic time loop movies where you're repeating the same day in different ways over and over again. There is a Groundhog Day game that I rather enjoy. There's also time travel, where you get to go back in time or go into the future into a time and place that you haven't seen before. And I think Time Stories meshes those 2 things together really well. I love the game Time Stories, specifically Time Stories Revolution. The new versions of Time Stories I think are really, really well done. Because they give you the time loop. You cooperatively go through this scenario until you run out of time, and then you get to somewhat start back over. You usually keep a lot of things, especially in Time Stories Revolution. You keep a lot of the things that you learned and that you gathered, and then you go through it again and you do things a little better. And then you do that maybe one more time, and then you're finished with the game. But that's combined with this idea where you are really traveling to a very different time and place, and exploring that time and place through the game. Through the Time Story system of laying out a panorama of cards and you choosing, okay, I want to go look at what this thing is, and you go look at it and then you share that information with the other players. But just that sense of place in the adventure of that time and place that Time Stories creates really hits home for me for both the time travel, the time loop theme. So that is going to be my pick for my number one favorite time travel game, and time travel is going to be my number one theme. I really do love themes, and one thing that I want to mention before I go is that I polled our ambassadors to see how important theme was to them in games. And around 53% of people said that it mattered a lot. It made a big difference when they were deciding which games they were going to purchase, which games they were going to get excited about. And then another, I think it was around 45% of people said that it mattered a little bit. So it wasn't a non-factor at all. And I think only 5 or 6% of people said that theme doesn't matter to them at all. When they're thinking about a game, the theme literally doesn't matter. They're only looking at the mechanisms. But I thought that was pretty notable. I know 53% is only about half, but just that over 90% of the people said that theme matters at least a little bit when they're making a decision about buying a game. And I mentioned these themes partially today because someday I hope to either design or publish a game with all of these themes. Obviously, I've designed a few games that already fit these themes, but there are some games on this list that I have not designed a game for. I'm working on an open world exploration game, so I'm going to check that one off. Old World Japan, I haven't done anything in that one. I don't have a superhero game. I don't have a cave mining game. I don't have a heist game, and I don't have a time travel game. So if you are working on a game that you might want to someday submit to Stonemaier Games, or just a game that you're hoping that I play someday, I am always excited when I hear about these themes in games, and I will be excited if I hear about a game that you design that has one of these themes as part of it. So yeah, those are my thoughts about my favorite themes in games. I'd love to hear your top 3 favorite themes that capture you across all forms of media, especially tabletop games, and maybe your favorite game with each of those themes, and or for each of my top 10 favorite themes, what your favorite game in that theme is. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.